Of course, LGBTQ issues have been there for a while, but trans issues in particular are somewhat burgeoning, I would say, somewhat in their infancy.
I still would be like completely behind trans people not feeling it. I would, advocate for correcting certain things.
But hold on. But the big meaty dick part, even that, because I was like trying to remember that joke.
Somebody clip that.
Yeah, no, Jesus, no, do not clip that. I didn't understand how many haters you had until I said that. Then they came out the wood.
Hate me.
It was OD. Like that, a lot of times, like the pushback that you would get were people like making arguments that, and as you were making those, as you were saying it, I was like, oh, those aren't my arguments at all. Like I don't, I did watch it. I did my own little independent video on it. And yeah, man, obviously I'm a super duper huge Dave Chappelle fan. Long before these new Netflix specials. I think
me as well. He was my favorite comedian for a while.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and
him and Louis C.K.
See, I didn't get into Louis C.K. I didn't. I have friends that love him, that they swear by him, but I just never. If I'm
honest, I like Louis C.K. more than Dave.
You're crazy. Really?
For a time, like it was partially because I discovered Louis C.K. as I was getting older, and his comedy resonates, I think, more from an age perspective because it's really introspective. It's a little self-loathing. It's also a lot of stuff about having kids and parenting and being a husband, and so like Dave was always more like these zany, outlandish situations and racism and stuff like that. And so that's universal, but like Dave never really touches on his family and his home like a ton. He does more now, but Louis, that was like the core of a lot of his when I discovered him in my early 30s, that was the core of his comedy, and I was becoming a father. So for a period 10 years ago, that was like I was all about Louis C.K.
That makes sense. I think a lot of times what we do is we kind of look for comedians. I think the job of a comedian, and for the most part, is to kind of give us some cause to reflect on experiences that we're having. And then but they do so in a comedic way. Sometimes it's just for commentary purposes, but it's supposed to be in a way that typically makes us laugh. That's what we look to comedians for. Like I look at like Sinbad, and I remember, man, it was simple stuff. Like I remember him talking about McDonald's and people taking forever to order. And he was like, and you got some idiot going, and he's like looking back and he's like, say me on the left side, on the right side. And it's just, let me see it. And I just remember as a kid identifying with just being frustrated, waiting in line behind another person. And then it's just like, it's not anything profound in that. It's just pointing out to you, here's a thing that you experience, and the way they do it, it becomes funny. And a lot of times, sometimes the thing is not necessarily funny, but just the idea that they're speaking to something that your brain identifies when it's already prepared to laugh makes you laugh. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I can totally get that. I don't have any children, so then, Louis C.K. probably wouldn't resonate with me in the same way. I also think Dave Chappelle is a particularly cerebral comedian. And so then because of that, he's like my favorite comedian. One of the funniest people I know in real life is my brother, Johan. And his favorite comedian, he was saying he does not believe Dave Chappelle is the funniest comedian. He thinks Cat Williams is funnier. And it blew my mind. And he was...
Cat Williams has some amazing jokes.
Of course.
But to me, he's fell off real bad. Like he's like everything since, I think, American Pimp has been worse. The one he did, his best joke ever is the Tigers. Have you heard the Tiger?
No.
The one about the Tiger? Oh my God. I'm not gonna repeat it. Just Google niggas is tight. Can I say niggas? I don't know.
Yeah, you good. You can say whatever you want. I am on Twitch. Yeah, but you're good. You're good.
We can say niggas on Twitch? Okay. Yeah. Progress. Can I say the C slur? Let me not start. Let me not even start.
So, no, we're going to get into that. We're going to. Just real quick, as an aside, when you finish what you're saying, go ahead.
Just Google niggas as tigers. It's literally top 5 joke of all time. Top 5 joke of all time. Like that my personal top 5 jokes of all time. That's got to be top 3, really. I can't think of the other 2. I just don't want to put it there.
Yeah.
But it's such a good joke, and it's so insightful. But it's like ever since then, just for me, Cat Williams,
he just started falling. So I was never a big fan. I just never was. Okay, I don't hate the dude. I'm really selective about what I watch, anyways, as it is. And I wasn't a big fan. And my brother made that comment, and then I was talking to one of my other brothers, whom I respect greatly, and he said something similar. And so then I was kind of taken aback. So I was like, we're like discussing it, and then he was like, let's just put one on right now. And I was like, okay. So he just puts on the Cat Williams special, and we laughed throughout the whole thing. I don't even remember which one it was, but I remember laughing, and I was like, okay, so he is funny. Because up to this point, I didn't have any reason to think he was funny. I just never really like checked him out like that. So
Cat is interesting. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's it. Because
we can go over on comedy tangents. I have literally never had a chance to talk black comedy.
Yeah.
And so, like, as I'm thinking about it, I have so many opinions, and now this is going to end up being an hour-long video essay.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm just starting to spitball in my head. But I know we got to get specifically to the closer.
Okay, we're going to.
I don't want to belabor too. I don't want to wander forever and waste your time. And,
for sure. I mean, good conversations digress all the time, though. But but you're right. We do have an intention. Before we get to it, I'm sorry. One last thing, because you mentioned the C slur. I say it. And here's the reason.
I say it too.
Okay. Yeah. No.
I find the discourse around it amusing, but I really don't want to get too far into certain individual associations that you may or may not have that I've dealt with.
We're not mentioning names at all, and we're not even having conversations around that person, period. With that being said, because we both have had some negative run-ins there. That's crazy. So regarding that word specifically, man, this is something that I had to learn this word, and it really, really helped me to understand what was going on. Are you familiar with the word locution?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
It's from language stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So like the whole idea that there are specific words that are going to be used by specific groups of people that have specific definitions for that group of people, right? Mm-hmm. Or phrases that mean something to a specific group of people but don't mean the same thing for anyone else, right? A good example of that is like Nippon. In Japan, they refer to their country as Nippon. It's all the rest of us, we call it Japan. For them, it's Nippon, right? Another example of this would be nigga, right? We say the word nigga, and it means something to us specifically, but that doesn't mean that everyone else gets to use it or it means the same thing. Another really good example.
Please believe you do not have to explain me.
Of course.
The function of the word nigga.
Yeah.
A hilarious, I don't judge you for having had that moment, because like it probably made sense. There's no way you could have known how this like content farming nonsense works. But the very idea that is a discourse is so frustrating to me like there's that, and it's an ongoing discourse. Like every 6 months we gotta have that conversation with these motherfuckers.
Only online though. No one's in real life coming to you talking about like, we should be able to say it too. Yeah, no, that's not a thing. It's an online conversation.
Online. And it's like, I want to give grace. It's like, all right, look, y'all, online, there's infinite possibilities. It's a great, it has the potential to be a great communication venue, but it's also like, you gotta shuffle motherfuckers out. I had all those why you can't say it conversations in my mid 20s. I retired at 31. So I'll do it.
For sure. I respect all of that. So the last example I'm gonna give you, peep this out. You might make a joke about your wife to a friend and say something along the lines of like, man, she's just be in the kitchen. I like when she's barefoot and pregnant. And it might be fun and games, and it's like, this is a joke that you made about your wife, and you'd be perfectly fine. If that same friend came back to you one day, like maybe a week later, and then said something about, your barefoot and pregnant wife, you might start feeling some type of way, like, no, hold on, nope. Only I'm allowed to do this, right? Yeah. And the same, because that's a locution, because you start having special properties depending on how close you are to something. And in the same way, when it comes to that word, which I know we're not supposed to say on Twitch because people get banned on it. I have not been banned because I'm not using it to be offensive. I believe that it is a locution. It is a phrase that Black people use specifically to refer to other Black people who are working against Black interests. That's how we use it. Now, it also happens to be a slur as well when white people use it, in which case it becomes racially essentialized. That means they're not talking about the actions, the attitudes, the attributes of the individuals. It's just a universal thing about all Black people. which, you know, is associated with stealing, thieving, so on and so forth, or whatever. So when I'm using the word, I'm not using it as a race essentialized thing. It's not all black people. I'm talking about an action. When they're using it, they're just demonizing all black people. There's a difference. But now our language, our locutions are being policed by white people, where they're saying our usage, our gaze, our appropriation, or whatever word you want to use, our view and perspective of this word is what we'll use to police how you use it, even though you have a totally different perspective, different culture, different locution. It's unfair.
Yeah, that's why. So one, that's why I say fuck them people. But I'm assuming that you're taking this into the Chappelle conversation, because that tends to be where I take the most. I feel like that's where you have the most unassailable logical problem with that's where I have, I think, the most unassailable logical problem with Chappelle. I don't want to get into too tough the realities of trans issues and trans people. What I think has been most convincing to other people who did not have issue with Chappelle and his trans jokes is pretty much that same argument, that look, what you're allowing Dave to do here, using your words, is to like transgress internal locution. Locution.
Yeah.
An internal dynamic that you don't get to just come in and make these jokes about a group of people that you don't really have any attachment to. And your attachment to them is, what is it? Inch deep and a mile wide. You know what I'm saying? So like you end up doing really bad things with your jokes. And that's kind of, and that end is just like, I feel like we're four shows in now with Chappelle, and that's like 30% of his jokes.
For the closer, it was more than 30%. It was more than 30%.
No. I'm sorry, not the closer. What did he just come out with? Because is the closer the one? Which one? Because I've done 2 videos about Chappelle now, my main channel and my side channel.
Yeah.
Which one was the most recent one? Was that the closer?
No, the closer was, I don't know, I forget the name of the most recent one. I can look it up. My boy went to it though. He saw it in person. It was pretty.
So the closer was the worst one. It was like 75% of the closer.
Easy 75.
And then like this other one, it was maybe more like 30-40%, thankfully. I can't remember it though. I can't remember the name of it. I'm sitting in front of my
yeah, I'm trying to look it up myself. The
Dreamer.
There we go. Yeah, that's it. So okay, the closer, it's really gross. I felt like the closer was not as funny for me as it should have been. And the reason is because, and I'm pretty sure you'll probably have a similar experience. Okay, I think a comedian's supposed to be ahead of you. And this is Dave Chappelle's take. They should not be able to know your punchline before you give the punchline. That's what a good comedian is supposed to be able to do. It's supposed to almost shock you, which also triggers the funny in your brain. Well, with the closer, I don't feel like he shocked me like the vast majority of the time. And the reason is because ever since, the long hot summer of, whatever, of 2020, I've been, at home. We were in lockdown. So I was in these leftist spaces having a bunch of debates and conversations. We were on these panels weekly, 2 of them a week, and sometimes like personal conversations. And trans conversations dominated that space. No matter what topic you would talk to, it was going to find a way of weaving into trans issues. It was literally like 95% of the time. And so because of that, we've had all these very like in-depth, nuanced conversations about rights, about bigotry, about transphobia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So because of that, we've had to get into all of this nuance, whereas it felt like Dave was so incredibly surface level, which is not what I expect from Dave. I expect him to be the cerebral comedian that really pushes me to see things in a way that I've never thought about or whatever, but it felt very surface level. And so I felt like I got robbed of that special.
To me, it was lazy. It was beneath him. I expected better from Dave. I think this is part of getting older. You start to kind of like de-iconify the people you looked up to and that like impressed and influenced you as you were younger. Because as you get older, it's easier to identify the shortcomings. It's like I have 2 sons. My sons love the shit out of me now. They think I'm amazing. At some point in the next 10 years, they're gonna be like, oh, that nigga ain't shit on some level. You know what I'm saying? It's just the nature of how it works. And so like that's, Dave was Dave was like, when I think about, you know, the love I had for Kanye or Diddy or whatever, like Dave is lower on the totem pole in terms of disappointment, but it's just the nature of the beast. Like I said in that video, like this man didn't even mention like January 20th had happened, if I'm not mistaken, in the time where he was doing this show. It's like you had no, we still haven't gotten any jokes about that barely from anybody. I wonder if that's like some conspiracy shit.
Is January 20th Buffalo? What is that? I don't know what that is.
Not 20th, shit, January 6th.
Oh, okay. I was
January 6th. January 20th. January 6th, I'm pretty sure happened then. You know, I make the comment like a girl glued her hair to her head. Dave Chappelle makes jokes about it. That's not highbrow, but I want to see how Dave Chappelle makes that into a joke.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like all these different things that he could have did to do, you know, it's interesting. It's one thing I've you know, to empathize with Dave and why he dedicated a whole show to. There's something that happens to your brain when you become when you get famous. And I'm seeing that at my modicum of fame. I call it being fake famous, right? Just being a big YouTuber, which means that most people don't know who I am, but I get recognized out and about pretty regularly, and you know, I get thousands of comments, you know, from all of these different places, et cetera, et cetera. Funny, I just finished talking about this with somebody. I don't remember who it was. When you're taking in so much information about yourself from people that don't know you, you begin to turn down your capacity to take any of that seriously, to like really engage in that criticism, because it's just not possible to do it effectively. Like if I think I made the comment. I was talking to Oleyemi. I'll just call it that. Because I won't fuck up her last name.
Yeah.
But I might get 20,000 comments on a video. I'm only gonna read 500. Out those 500, you know, 485 are gonna be positive comments, ranging from "I really enjoyed this" to "Oh shit, you just changed my life." You know what I'm saying? And then like 15 are gonna be negative, and out of those 15 negative, 12 are gonna be just complete bullshit. That's like you didn't watch, you don't care.
Yeah.
You're a fan of somebody that doesn't like me. You know what I'm saying? I'm not, you know, whatever. I'm not paying you no attention. And then 2 are gonna be like something that makes you go like, oh, okay, that's a good point. That's something I missed. That's something I can improve on, whatever.
Sure.
But that's so rare. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a rare occasion, and you know, for your own sanity, you stop engaging with that. And then on the flip side, before you get to that point, and this is I think what happened to Dave. Dave was a Hollywood darling. I pointed this out in the video. Dave had a very, very privileged come up in Hollywood as a black comedian, in that he was never a black comedian. Dave immediately started with white audiences in a way that Cat Williams, Sinbad, etc. never did. And so Dave had never gotten really criticized on a high level. And so Dave was like, y'all got me fucked up. So here's a whole hour-long special. How about how y'all got me fucked? It was still wrong from my perspective, but I get how you do that, because there was times when people were coming at me sideways where I'm like, I'm fury on these keyboards. I got 20, 30, 40 minute long response videos to a bunch of different assholes that are lost in the wind because my wife said, nigga, don't do that. And so it doesn't come out. And like, I really wish somebody would have did that today, because this doesn't have to be such a big part of his legacy from my perspective.
Okay. So I feel like, I think we had different perspectives when it came to the idea of why it was disappointing. Because while I saw, like, again, it was very surface level, I guess I didn't attribute that to laziness. What I mostly thought about it was more so that, one, like, I think trans issues as like being part of like mainstream political discourse, I think it's kind of new, somewhat burgeoning. And I feel like, of course, LGBTQ issues have been there for a while, but trans issues in particular are somewhat burgeoning, I would say, somewhat in their infancy. At least they were. And it feels like I expect most people that aren't like in online circles and stuff not to be even like really ready to have those kinds of conversations to that level. And also I think part of it is the idea that you have to appeal to an audience in a way that they understand. And I constantly was like explaining to people during like around that time that I believe, no exaggeration, I believe I've interacted with more trans people than everyone in my like immediate and distant family combined by a lot. Because they're not online people. My family is like a very, very, I have a humongous family, by the way. I have 4 older brothers, 2 older sisters, mom and dad, all same biological parents. We all lived in the same house, we were raised in the same household. So it's like a 9 household, right? 9 family household. And yes, and then my grandmother had 8 children. Or I'm sorry, my grandmother had 6 children.
Ooh, I know that's some dope cousin moments.
Man, if you see those photos, it was like literally like 70 people, because then my mom's siblings had a lot of kids sometimes. And so, but before long we would have these family functions where it's just a lot, right? And this isn't like just from these two, the two, you know, my grandmother and my grandfather, just them down, like not even going to their cousins and all the other stuff. Right. So it's like, I said all that to say that like I have a humongous family, and I still genuinely believe I've interacted and engaged with more trans people and trans content than all of them combined. So for me, when we start getting into like very nuanced conversations about trans issues, it's like, okay, I already know I've lost them. They're still even trying to understand what is transness, right? Like, and so I think for Dave, I could be wrong. I don't know his intention for sure, but I really looked at it more so as opposed to laziness is more so about idea kind of just kind of dealing with the surface level, because that's where the world is at this point. And if he goes too deep, then I don't think most people can keep up, because you'd be putting the cart way before the horse.
Yeah, I disagree though, because so laziness is that's my hammer. I don't know what to call it, but I know he didn't know what he was talking. And
okay.
He didn't put in the effort to figure those things out, and he knew that he didn't have to, right? Or I perceive that he knows he doesn't have to, that he already feels like, because you made a good point in that trans issues are, you know, emerging as a thing in like popular discourse. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are emerging to the idea that that's a thing that they should be at least somewhat cognizant of, and not just, you know, throw rocks at off GP, right? You have people making the attempt to not be overtly offensive or harmful to trans people and people with trans folks in their lives, etc. So knowing that, he can make a joke about trans women cutting off their penises, and knowing that people will laugh because they don't understand how inaccurate, offensive, and shallow a joke that is. Because it's funny to, I compared it to chicken and watermelon jokes. You have a group, you have a dominant group, you have a subordinate, and the subordinate group doesn't get to tell their own stories, doesn't even get to speak for themselves much, which is why, like, generally speaking, and I'm gonna even still very much tread lightly here, I don't like talking about trans issues in public. I will say, holla at my homie Bellamy, holla at my homie Professor Flowers, holla at my homie Jesse Gender, etc. Holla at the homies that do that are trans, that can have this conversation with you. I'm a cishet man with 2 kids. I can talk to you about anything from Tekken to Pan-Africanism. That's all me. But, you know, like, if you want to talk trans issues, I want them to speak for themselves. That's much better than, there's so many reasons why I think that's better. I don't want to get into it. But I also had to come to understand that that's not always ideal or effective for communicating around these things. I lost a train of thought. So, but the reason I was pointing this out is that for me, I try not to, you know, there's the obvious argument of, you know, he has the right to say it, yada, yada, yada. And I don't disagree with that. And I do think there's usefulness to what happens after Dave makes the closer. But at the end of the day, Dave relied upon a very hierarchical understanding and experience of the world to say, I can make these jokes about this group of people, that there will be very little consequence if these jokes offend them. The people that I'm making the joke to are already aligned to laugh at them and not treat them with, you know, dignity and humanity. And, you know, fuck it. which low-key, I feel like he said that at least once or twice during these two, you know, these two things. So, a last thing, perfect example of Dave's insightfulness. because this is the reason why I feel like it frustrates me. In the Dreamer, right? He makes a very offensive but amazingly insightful joke about his own audience being a handicapped person, where he's like, you know, he makes one trans joke and then he says, okay, I'm not making any trans jokes. I'm only making handicap jokes now. And then he impersonates a person that's handicapped. And then I'm not going to repeat that shit. But the punchline to the joke is that the handicapped person says, I didn't come here to be offended. I came here to laugh at trans people. And like, to me, that's what I come to Chappelle for. I'm not expecting people who are, you know, disabled to think that's funny and to be the punchline of the joke, but they're kind of not. The punchline of the joke is the very nature of offensive comedy and like where people draw or should not draw the line.
Absolutely.
And so if that were how Dave handled his trans jokes, I still would be like completely behind trans people not feeling it. I would, you know, advocate for correcting certain things, but I would be much more generous to Dave's comedy because it truly be something masterful in that. If that makes sense. Instead of just, you know, a trans woman throws her penis on the table. Like that was a literal punchline. Not in the close, but like in one of his other comedy specials where he makes a trans.
Right. Okay. So look, I hear where you're coming from, and I also respect the joke. I think he made another similar joke about his audience where he said something like, but it was more about cancel culture, and I just remember him, like, the joke being on the audience, where he was like, you know, I'm gonna do impressions, and then he like does like the I don't understand you.
The Asian.
No, not that one. Where he's like he goes, I don't understand what you're saying. I think you whatever. You shouldn't have a job or something like that. And then he goes, and who do you guys think that is? And he's like, that's you. That's the cancel culture thing, right? And I remember that one caught me off guard. And my buddy inside, my brother, he laughed. I mean, he didn't find that funny. He was like, oh, it was too obvious. I knew where it was going. And for some reason, I didn't know where it was going. It caught me off guard, and I found it incredibly funny. Because shock is funny, to some degree, within whatever. Okay, so on the closer, I feel like it blew my mind when I saw the reaction that people had about it, about his trans jokes, and just about his trans jokes and about the LGBTQ stuff that he was saying in general. Because to me, I feel like I swear to you, this is not a gotcha, or this is not trying to like sound like something, whatever. But genuinely, I feel like it was hyper trans affirming in a way that I don't think most people really caught. I want you to understand a few things. One, this is where I talk about the surface level. The very simple thing about referring to someone as the gender they prefer. That's so far, like that's not a conversation you're even willing probably to entertain anymore, because it's like so beneath, right? Like we're way past that. We're well past that. We are. You understand that the vast majority of the world are not. Like they're still stuck in the, why do I need to use a different pronoun for you? What, like, why can't I call you a he if you were born a male, right? Like they're past that. They're not even at the point of like understanding the difference between gender and sex. Like Again, we take a lot of these things for granted because we've been in these conversations. One of the most normalizing things that Dave Chappelle did the entire time was, one, specifically referring to trans people by proper pronouns. That in and of itself, can you imagine how many conservative, anti-trans people see that, and now because they see someone whom they respect, an icon of sorts, could you imagine how many people that would immediately come and say, okay, you know what? I guess the pronoun thing isn't that big a deal. Do you think I'm reaching?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not so much that I think you're reaching. I am going to decline to dictate what's trans affirming. Because I don't know, you know what I'm saying? And like, I'm going to present the idea that you can be politely an asshole, that you can have nice racism, you know what I'm saying? And so like using pronouns was nice, right? But like so much of the other stuff undermined the use of pronouns. Like so much of the inherent logic of the other humor and jokes undermine the pronouns. And so like I know plenty of people that are willing to use a pronoun, but are more than willing to also support anti-bathroom bills. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like there's, you know, it's kind of like nice racism. you know, like I know I'm here in the South, right? I've shook the hands of plenty of white people at work and you know, just my personal life. Oh shit, there you go. That are very nice to me, like in like upfront, and are actively pursuing my destruction. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so like I don't give that much credence, because that's very bare minimum from my perspective, like just as a black man. So like if I were a trans person, that was the first hurdle. We had 7 other, like, you know what I'm saying, like it's the hurdles, what is it, 10 hurdles? So you got over the first hurdle and you tripped over the next 9. I'm not really going to give you a lot of credit for your race, you know what I'm saying, for your attempt at the 110 meter hurdles. I'm not saying you're wrong, because that is a correct thing, and it does something. It was something for millions of people. That was the most they've heard or learned about trans people their entire lives. That one comedy special. So they learned to use pronoun, right? But like everything else, they really missed from my perspective. So it's kind of like, okay, you know.
But I got another one then.
You try.
Kate? Yeah. But look, here's another one, because even the bathroom thing, right? I'm so glad you brought that one up. That was another one that he really pushed them there too, because he made a bathroom joke where he was like, I'd rather so-and-so come, They passed a law in North Carolina that says you have to use a bathroom for what you were assigned at birth. And everyone started, yeah, they did. And he said, well, some people cheered originally, and then he said, they cheered. Yeah, and then he said, actually, that's not a good thing. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. Where's he going with this? And then he makes a joke about, okay, yeah, I mean, does it make a lot of sense? You know, I don't think it's going to make a lot of sense for me if I'm sitting at the urinal and somebody backs up their neo-vagina onto me, like, I mean, to the urinal next to me, and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad it's you. And he's like, I think right there, even then he's pushing back against the notion, because some people are just as simple as, no, because I could say probably about 5 years ago, that was my argument. It was, or maybe 6. It was like, hey, why don't we just make bathrooms, you know, based off of sex as opposed to gender? And then here he is like explaining, I'm well past that now, but I'm saying at the time that made sense to me. And he's like, wait, that doesn't make sense, because yeah, you're going to have this trans person in a dress and makeup, neo-vagina trying to use a urinal. Doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. Like, these things start getting a little bit more complicated. And I think even that is already pushing back against the notion that, like, hey, it's just as simple as sex, because it's not. And I don't think most of those people who didn't even know about using pronouns are now having to contend with, hey, wait a minute, these bathroom bills, that, you know, some of this stuff is kind of irrational. And I think, like, again, time and time, even at one point when he mentions gender is a fact, he says that, and then later on starts separating gender from sex. So it's like, because when he mentions gender as a fact, I know immediately it sets off alarm bells in everyone, where they're just like, wait a minute, like, no, but I mean, oh yes, gender is gender is a social construct. Right. So in that context, and immediately alarm, and justifiable alarms. But then he starts everything he can do to separate it. For example, even one of the closing lines, like one of the 2 final points he makes is where he says, I would say to her, I knew your father, and your father was a beautiful woman, right? So like in that point, you're still like separating the two, where it's like, okay, I knew this, or even before that, where he says, she. I wish I have the exact quote. He says something to the effect of, this isn't a person that became a woman. This wasn't a man that became a woman. She was a woman when I met her, right? And he's talking about Daphne, the trans person. So, so I feel like constantly he was doing so much to like normalize like so many things about transness that it felt like for people to like say things like, oh man, you know, he just, you know, he. I feel like, so for me, and it's so funny because at that time I was touching on it, but I didn't know it as well as I didn't feel it and understand as I do now. And I will probably be even less nice to Dave for this. Your argument notwithstanding, because you're correct, right? There were things Dave Chappelle did in the close that were, you know, air quotes trans affirmed. To me, is a much bigger problem is the hierarchical nature of who gets to control the images and discussions about their own identity. And
more than anyone right now, more than any community, any marginalized community right now in this country, trans people have zero control over their narrative in like mainstream media. You know what I'm saying? And then, and this is a big point I pointed out, Black trans people specifically, basically, you know, you only see them when it's time to talk about who's been killed, right? And so my problem with Dave, even more so now and still then, wasn't just that he said some really offensive things. It was the audacity. You know what I'm saying? It was the audacity to go in like that when you don't really have a full grasp on these things. It was very clumsy. It's very, you know, it's very stereotypical white liberal anti-racism activity. It's very Black Lives Matter era. It's very 2020 summer, like, you know, I really want to do something about racism and racism TikTok. You know what I'm saying? Like, and like, so the sentiment, if we want to just say, oh, the sentiment, I get you. That's nice. Thank you. But the problem is how having a large platform makes that such a perilous and dangerous thing to do. And if you're really about that life, then you have a trans person in the writer room with you or something. Like, you do the research. I don't know what you do if you're Dave specific. Maybe you just don't do it at all. I often compare Dave to Bill Burr in this regard. Bill Burr makes a lot of Black jokes, right? There's another guy, just divorced his wife and his wife hates him and his kids hate him. I can't remember his name. You know what I'm talking about. He's a comedian. He just did a Club Shay Shay. I felt bad for him, but also I can't hear you.
Was it like Gary Owens or something like that?
Gary Owens. Yeah. So those are white people that, in an ideal world, they still don't make blacks. If you ask me, if I get into my Dr. Umar bag for a second, I don't want to hear your goddamn jokes. But I hear some of them shits, I'm like, okay, that was funny, nigga. You all right. But they're funny because those are two white people that have had a significant immersion experience within Black culture. So they don't make chicken and watermelons. They don't make Black jokes like Daniel Tosh. You know what I'm saying? If you remember Daniel Tosh. They make Black jokes that you can only make if you have an intimate relationship with Black people, because you know and understand that shit and you get the humor, right? And so you'll get a nigga to laugh, you know what I'm saying? And it won't be an uncomfortable chuckle. It'd be like, I see you laugh.
Yeah.
What Dave did is the opposite. It's a Daniel Tosh version of that same thing. But with his legendary status and with his huge platform as the most attention grabbing comedian in the world at the time, and probably still right now, his little bit of useful nuggets, I think, is greatly outweighed by the really negative things he did. And excuse me, even if they weren't, for me, the way I feel about like big platform, like I don't know how much you watch it be. I've barely made any really political content in almost a year now, because what I've just personally just started to feel is that when you put out really important ideas on your platform speaks for you in ways that you can't control. And those ideas reverberate in ways that you can't even foresee. And so it becomes...
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
The best thing I can say is that there have been ramifications from my political content that have affected real life things in ways that I wasn't expecting. It made me feel unsafe in my city. And that's as far as I'll go. You right? Nigga, I'm a YouTuber. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a politician. I'm not a public speaker. I got a channel. My last video was about rap duo from the 80s. And before, like the video before my last political video was about anime or something, you know? So it's like, you know, but millions of views, you know, and you don't know who sees it. And so there are gonna be many things you could point to in Chappelle's The Closer and all of his moments talking about trans people, that if you wanted to isolate them, you could say that is a positive thing to have happen for certain people in the audience. But because of how big a platform is, there's also just immense carelessness with not knowing what you're talking about and doing it anyway. And whatever good he did, like to defend bathroom bills and then come back and then, you know, I think the joke was the punchline was big meaty dick. You know what I'm saying? I'm almost positive that was the punchline of that joke after he defended the bathroom bill. And then to go into J.K. Rowling and compare transness to blackface. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there's
but hold
many...
on. But the big meaty dick part, even that, because I was like trying to remember that joke.
Somebody clip that.
Yeah, no, Jesus, no, do not clip that. I'm deleting all my clips. That's it.
That's fine.
I'm kidding. But like even that thing, that the whole purpose of that, which I don't think that was necessarily, the whole purpose of this is me talking about, okay, hey, tell me if this makes sense for a person to go into a female bathroom and pull a big meaty dick out or whatever, like that, and then like you're juxtaposing.
We're talking about intent versus impact, right? I've done plenty of things to offend, black women, disabled people, black men in my content, and people have let me know about it, and I'll be like, I didn't intend to, but that's less impact. And I've tried to be more careful about it from going forward. I have a moderator and a friend that I create with who doesn't like the word crazy, right? Because this is a friend that's dealt with being institutionalized and mental disabilities throughout their life, and the word crazy has been used to marginalize them in a way that's hard for me to even fathom, aside from the N-word. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to take it there, but like I get you. Mm-hmm. And so like I've stopped using that word for the most part in all my content in my daily life, just out of respect for them. Now I don't expect everybody to do that, right? Mm-hmm. But like that's somebody I call a peer, so I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
What was the point of me saying? You had just said something.
We were talking about the big meaty.
Oh, no. So so when I use that word crazy, I never think about it in terms of like being institutionalized, mm-hmm. or like the horrors of what that means to be T80, whatever it is here in Atlanta. Like that's something that be done to them. Yeah. 5150, wherever you at. Like I worked in social services. Like there'll be a child having a breakdown because of all these different things going wrong in their life, and they say, yeah, we're gonna send you to an institution for a couple of weeks because you're so I get the trauma of that. Mm-hmm. So my intent for whatever comment set my friend off was not to harm them, but that didn't change the impact. Mm-hmm. And when you're a Dave Chappelle, and if you want to be above critique at a minimum, let alone like your legacy and what we expect from you and your capabilities that you've shown us, if you want to be above critique, if you want people's arguments against you to not have a lot of teeth, then you got to do better than what it's not just did he have good points. I guarantee you that if I watch it back, I can find things to pull out of it. The criticism, two things can be true at once. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I guess I probably have to go through it again. What I'm gonna have to do, I'm probably gonna have to get like a trans friend or someone, and then have us go through that special together. This is something that you and I cannot do. It would make the most sense.
Someone that is also on, like, not just trans friend, but like someone who is up on this shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Like, because that's kind of the thing. Because here's the thing, I'm always hesitant to do this because niggas get mad, but I don't like when white people talk about our shit.
Sure.
I be getting real annoyed. Mm-hmm. You know, I've told a few creators, hey, don't say shit else about anything that I would make a video about.
Yeah, I get it.
Like, because you ain't gonna do it right. If you want me to come through and have a section of your video, I might do that, like whatever. But like, yeah, like just be more, because it's, even if they do it perfect. There's a creator, I won't name. They did a video that when I watched the video, I was like, I get you. This wasn't bad. Mm-hmm. Still, shouldn't have did.
I feel it feels frustrating because I think ever since like the long hot summer of 2020, I think, man, just seeing all the performative TikToks, like when people like were doing the blackouts and all that kind of stuff, it started rubbing me really, really, really wrong. It actually really bothered me to a great degree, because it made me realize, one, like a lot of people were almost, I hate using this phrase, but it is just facts. They were fetishizing black trauma is what they were doing. Yes. And I think that stuff started getting to a point where it started feeling like, wait a minute, hold on. Like you're not actually engaging on these issues. You don't even know what these issues are actually about. Sometimes you're getting a lot of things wrong. Like I don't even trust your intention behind it. Also, you're like, now your voice is becoming louder than the actual black voices, who, whatever, so on and so forth, who have a lot more nuance. And then for all of these reasons, it would bother me to some degree. I'm never going to make the blanket statement, I don't want white people to talk about it, right? Because I think that goes a little bit too far. But I do understand the idea about centering the harm around the individuals and allowing their voices to be the primary voice when we're going to be discussing the harm that they're receiving. Totally agree with that. And likewise, so even with this Dave Chappelle thing, it's because I'm not the purpose I'm talking about is not necessarily to just greatly center the harm. I'm trying to frame Dave Chappelle appropriately and the closer appropriately, and I feel like I can only do that. I have my perspective as a black man, doing commentary on a black comedian, but then we're gonna get into that. But then obviously when we're trying to like frame the trans harm, then the trans person's gonna have to be able to like counter or contend there. As far as the black man, go ahead.
Well, no, to kind of piggyback, but also add nuance to what you were just saying, like, and it's not even just so much like, because you're correct. I don't want no white people to ever talk about race issues, right? But what you touched on is like, as soon as we get here, we have transmuted this from being a discussion or an opportunity to learn into content,
right?
Into a commercial venue. Yeah. And that warps and what's the word I want to use? That warps everything.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Listen to this. This is something that bothered me, and I don't hate this person at all. I will name drop here. Yeah, he can handle it. He deals with enough anyway. But I remember when Derek Chauvin was convicted, and I remember Vosh. He had said he was like doing a video, and he said, "We did this," pointing to himself and his community, right? And he says, and this is great. I'm going to be debating conservatives about this over the next X amount of time. And I remember in that moment, it really became crystal clear to me. Like, for me, I felt such an insane sense of relief. I'm pretty sure most black people did, because obviously we've seen in like Philando Castile and like Trayvon Martin, all these cases, and it took forever for Breonna Taylor. Like, they still haven't, they don't get the justice, right? Like, so for a lot of these things, I genuinely was shocked that he actually got convicted. I genuinely didn't expect him to get the justice, right? So for me, I feel a sense of relief. I feel a sense of joy. I feel like a sense of justice. I feel all of these things. They felt more elated at the opportunity it was going to present them for content. That's what it felt like to me in that moment. And maybe that's not all. Maybe all those other feelings are there too. But you know what I mean? But that felt like that was the main. Yeah. And so
it's such a palatable part of this creator economy on the left is, marketing, commodifying, and capitalizing off of not just black trauma, but also bringing it back full circle, trans trauma. This is one of the reasons why, like, I have a trans video in my like back pocket that I've been sitting on for almost a year now. I was gonna drop it in June, but then Drake got destroyed, and we're gonna do something. I have something I want to work on much more.
For sure.
So I don't know when it'll come, and I've been not doing it for a while because there's a very icky part of this process that I don't like, capitalizing off of issues too tough that I'm not directly connected to. Like, so if we go, black trauma is everywhere. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. So if I can make a couple of coins talking about Baby Boy, you know what I'm saying? Or what is a movie I just did, fucking Bamboozled? I'm gonna get those coins. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna talk my shit. You right? Cool about that. But like, as I get out of my pocket and bubbles, it feels like a certain person that we're not gonna talk about. But one of my issues with that person is they genuinely don't seem to care about any actual issues other than their ability to talk about them and make money debating them.
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
100%.
And I find that gross.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely disgusting.
It's cynical.
And when you learn it, then it's just like, what the freak are we doing? I don't want to get too far into that, but like, then it's like, why am I'm not engaging with this. This is gross. I refuse. So, okay. There's another thing that, one of the major points from your, I want to talk about something you said earlier. It's a bit of a tangent. It's a little bit off, but it's just because it resonated with me. It's something that I'm dealing with now. Okay, so my primary job, I'm a musician. Okay, like that's what I've done since I was a child, young, like since 3 years old. I've been playing the piano. Okay, and I'm in a band, and this band is like engaging in a lot more political content.
Sorry, I got a hard out in about 20 minutes 30.
Okay, no problem. So long story short, the more I've started I had applied at a place. I'm not gonna say where I applied because I still have some other pending applications there too. And the immediate concern became my content, where it was like, okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and I realized like some of my content would be somewhat inflammatory, and I had to start checking that because it was like actually going to impact my real life. Another time, I had a documentary. I shot a documentary with the company called Intel, and they were just doing this thing where they were just doing documentaries for gamers, because I used to be professional gamers who have gone on to other things. And one take on abortion, when they were like, "Yeah, we're not doing your documentary." After filming it, after giving me the laptop, after everything, they was like, "Yeah, we're not putting this out now." And it was like, really? And again, I'm not a bigoted person, I'm not a hateful person, I'm not, you know what I mean? It's just like, I'm not one of those, oh, life begins at conception, and so we should be like, I'm not on that. Just adding nuance to the conversation was just like, oh, we're not doing this. Okay. So then that happened. Recently I joined a band, and in that band, we were playing for a lot of political organizations. I am very, very critical of the Democrat Party. Okay. I am. I'm not a Republican in any capacity. I'm more critical of them, but I'm very critical of the Democrats.
Are pretty trash, especially right now. Yeah,
absolutely. Right. So then by doing that and then playing at these election parties of like elected Democrat officials, right? And, we're going to be playing the DNC this year. Like, I got very concerned. Like, oh, so my content now, is this going to be impacting my job? And in the beginning, I thought, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to disambiguate. I'm never going to tell them my online name. I'm going to only go by my real name. And I'll just make sure I'm not even going to mention my content, so on and so forth. Eventually, I got into a conversation with one of those people, and they knew everything. They had already done very extensive background check. I guess just as part of the machine, if you're going to be playing at these venues, they already do it. And so they're like, yeah, so you did this and this and this. And I'm like, how did you know that? And then they just looked at me like blankly, like why would you even ask that? What do you mean, how do we know that? Like, and I'm just like, yeah. So anyway, we had the conversation. So I said that to say, I totally understand about the concept of like your online content impacting your real life. It is something that you have to truly contend with. And so I'm hyper conscious of that at all times. Because I'm a smaller content creator, I don't have like this insulation. Dave Chappelle, on the other hand, and I think this is why he resonates with a lot of people. He resonates because everyone else has to be conscious from a state of fear. It seems like he's particularly aware and conscious of like the impact that he has, and unconscious of the intent of the individuals who engage with his content and would want to cancel him. But he's also aware that he in particular is impervious to the canceling. Yeah. I think so. Then that makes him resonate because people are like, he's saying the things that other people want to say, some things that are rational to say, but that they can't say.
Yeah, so there's probably some truth there. I find that with comedy right now, the cancel culture thing feels like not a scapegoat. What's the word I want to use?
Boogeyman?
I want to say excuse, but there's a phrase that's better describes it than boogeyman or scapegoat or excuse. I can't remember. Like red herring?
Okay.
I don't know. Whatever. The point is, like, for example, like Seinfeld just came out with a movie that everybody's saying is horrible. And Seinfeld's a guy that talks about, cancel culture's killing comedy so much. And there's a lot of old comedians that complain about cancel culture and newer, unfunny comedians. But nobody talks about the fact that, Bo Burnham had one of the biggest comedy specials of all time a couple of years ago in 2020. Or what's the really weird dude? He has one skit where he's in a hot dog suit.
I don't know.
Somebody know who I'm talking about. White dude put on a hot dog suit, and it's like somebody crashed a hot dog truck into a store, and he's like, "Who did this?" It's funny. I'm fucking it up. My point is that there's still good comedy being made. There's a million niggas on TikTok and YouTube right now. Caleb City, perfect example. That nigga's hilarious. He ain't made a single trans joke, a single joke about disabled people, etc. Constantly getting views, constantly whatever, still managing to be funny. I ain't heard a single complaint about cancel culture. So cancel culture, so like, to be clear and empathetic, we've allowed identity politics to become cooked, for lack of a better way of putting it. Identity politics are cooked in a way that is uncomfortable to talk about because we're still talking about marginalized people and people that suffer under the system. And we're talking about wanting to help those people. But the problem is the way that capitalism and white supremacy, yada, yada, really works is that it's like you ever see like a slime monster or sand on the beach or block? It's a constant erosion. I had a really good metaphor there, and then it turned into 3 different things and I lost it. It's a constant erosion where if we come up with something dope or useful for marginalized and oppressed people, the system will eventually fold that thing into itself and make itself more powerful by using that. Right? A perfect example is like one of my last political video, one of my homies who's non-college educated, working class, unionized, like all these really significant leftist things that we talk about but are never actually attached to our content. He said, why did y'all even come up with ACAB? What happened to fuck the police? And I was like, that's fucking brilliant. What happened to fuck the police? You know what I'm saying? That was the name of the video, because it went from fuck the police to ACAB to defund the police to actually fund the police so they can get better training. Right. Which is literally what happened in America after 2020. Like the police budgets exploded.
Let's go Democrats.
After they killed the nigga. You know, so let's go Democrats. Right, exactly. Police budgets exploded after they killed the nigga on TV. And then we marched and we tore shit up and they gave them more money. So bringing that back to identity politics and cancel culture, there's a problem in that these platforms and these discourses are dominated by petite bourgeois and very liberal. The radical folks are not really having these conversations. They can't build a platform as big as I've built. This is why I'm much less radical than people. Than the real radicals, I'll be on my ass. The moderates and liberals love me to death. The real radicals be like, nah, nigga, we need more. And I was like, damn. Yeah. And that's because when you do these little incremental things, when you have a cancel culture moment, everybody shouts about it on Twitter, makes a couple of TikToks, and then nothing happens, and they give the police more money. Yeah. So there is an argument around what happened with Chappelle and the concept of cancel culture to be made that says that we really need less of that. Sure. We genuinely need less hashtag anti-blank moments in our social discourse, in our political activity, etc. Because it wastes energy, it makes people think they did something when they really didn't, and it allows it to be commodified and recaptured by the status quo. Sure. So there's that. Also, nigga, shut up. You don't know what you talk about. There's also that moment. Right. There's also those things. And so it's like it's again, 2 things be true at once. Like when you're talking about, I lost train of thought. It was something you said about Dave. The point I was trying to get to is like essentially stay in your lane. You know? Okay. And
so I know we got 15 minutes, so I'm gonna try to run through a few of these things. Right. First off, to address like the stay in your lane thing. I think it does make. I understand it, but I think everything has to be within reason. And I think part of the job is like being a provocative, irreverent comedian. He talks on literally everything, right? So he talks about Jews. Like, listen, I'm so uninformed about like the Middle East politics and like foreign like politics. So when he told the space Jews joke, do you know I had no idea what that joke meant at all? Like, not at all. Now
that joke meant something? I thought it was just a funny, ridiculous thing to say.
Really? Man, so what he's talking about is Israel-Palestine. So he's talking about like the Jews, or a group of people who leave off to other planets and so on and so forth, yada, 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 live in another world, aka they lived in there, then they eventually come back, reclaim the place, and then say that it's now theirs, and then want to kick the other people out of the planet that have now been there for X amount of, I think he said 2,000 years, and we call it space Jews.
I'm gonna go back and listen to that. I completely missed that.
I missed it because I didn't know anything about Israel-Palestine. I only learned about Israel-Palestine because of October, whenever that date was, right? I'm terrible with time.
So, and perfect example, right? So like, I really don't know. I'm probably was in the same spot you. I'm focused on niggas.
Right.
I'm focused on the shit that's happening around
yes.
me. Like you telling me about what's happening in Israel-Palestine, I'm like, okay, that sounds serious. But I'm reading these books. This is where my degrees at. I don't know.
Right,
but
that's
people
me.
were coming to me like, FD, say something, make a video. And I'm like, I'm not about to Google this shit and then make a video to 700,000 people so I can either underinform or at best underinform, at worst misinform people about this shit.
Nope.
I will hold y'all up in solidarity, but like, no, you're asking me to make a commercial product around a serious thing.
And I'm not. Right. Yeah. Nah. Yeah. Miss me with that. So that joke I thought was, again, when he said it, it fell flat for me. I didn't laugh, and there was a few groans in the audience. I think from a few educated people who knew what he was talking about and what the joke was. But everyone else was just like, "Oh, okay, he just made a joke about Jews." right? So, but the thing is, like, as a comedian, like, that's what Dave has always done. He's always been very provocative. He's like talked about the fact that, like, when things are happening, people look to him a lot of times to, like, hey, give voice to these things the same way how they're doing with you, where it's like, hey, nah, bring, like, we want your content there. So I think, like, while I understand you probably shouldn't center, like, you shouldn't try to center yourself per se, but I think him having commentary on it makes somewhat sense, especially considering how dominant it's become in political discourse. The other thing was regarding like, I hear a comment that a lot of you guys had made was about black erasure. Because it felt like you guys kept saying that, hey, he's like erasing black trans people, or he's, or, you know, whatever. And I think that there was a reason why he did that, and he made it crystal clear. And I'm just gonna pull it up so I can find the exact quote really quickly. He says, hold on, man, I have too many notes. Oh, here it is. Here he is. It's where he ended up making a statement like, hey, yeah, you guys, everyone was calling me transphobic and so on and so forth. And he said, no, I don't have a problem with LGBTQ. My problem was with white people. And then he said, and he goes through and he says, I'm not to cut you off, but I think I know where you're going. Go ahead.
His most salient critique is of white LGBTQ, the political movement and social movements.
Was white people as a whole?
Yeah, because how they're white before they're gay, which is a phenomenon that happens across a lot of intersections, things that intersect with whiteness. White women, white queer people, white Jews. You know what I'm saying? Like, all these communities, if the white comes first, it always ends up doing some fuck shit.
Right.
And so that was a salient critique that I tried to give time for, because I don't think it's a critique that's made enough. But it's also, again, you know, you tread lightly. But that would have been, I think if he'd have done that more and dug into that more, I think that would have also been valuable, because the problem is the black erasure thing is a fancy, you know, online left way of talking about the fact that all the negative stuff that he said and all the negative ramifications from his special and his rhetoric is going to affect black queer people first. And that's kind of the thing that is the problem. It's not specifically just that he acts like black people aren't gay, which he facetely does, and that's an issue among community where we just kind of, like, when we think about queerness and gay people, we don't think about black people in that, like, group. And so that one erases them and makes them feel unseen and out of community, which is a whole nother set of issues. But also specifically because when bad things happen to gay people, they happen to black gay people first.
But but just to interject real quick, but didn't he, when he specifically was telling the joke about the white trans woman who was from the photo or whatever, and he's like, and she had two gay black dudes on the side of her. He's like, they wouldn't have been more gay if they had a dick in their mouth. I knew that they were gay, right? And then he says, so when she's telling this joke, he's like, so he looks at the two dudes and he's like, hey, do you have something to tell her? Right, because it's not that he's not identifying or understanding that black gayness it exists. It's more so that he's saying there's a problem. Like, his entire ideology, I mean, he says it over and over and over again, is about the idea that, like a bit of an oppression Olympics. It's about the idea that white trans people do have an intersectionality of oppression and privilege. They have the oppression of the LGBTQ status and the privilege of the whiteness. And he goes into the example about how he gets into an altercation with the trans person and then they call the police on him. And he's like, that's my problem with the movement. Then in that situation when she's like, my people, and he says, wait, did your people come over here in Transylvania? Like, and and slay it, so whatever. Clifford, y'all got something to tell her? Or when he's and I found the exact quote where he says, yeah, I never had a problem with LGBTQ people. He said, my problem was with white people. And he says, if you listen through my jokes, and he starts listing them off. And he said, I said, maybe you guys shouldn't be having these conversations in front of black people, right? Like, and where he said, like, you know, your movement has made so much progress.
That line in and of itself.
You just, so, but in context.
What else he said? I think I remember this. Even in context or out of context, that's just wild to say. You know what I'm saying? Because like it creates that line in and of itself is very explicit with, we have trans people, then we have black people. You know what I'm saying?
It only out of context.
Black people, right? But it's like that context is in or out of context. The out of context explanation of that is so important that you just shouldn't give the in context version. Does that make sense? It's that is in like you know, that's on the level of like debate bro hypotheticals. Well, hypothetically, if there were no, like it's like once you have to pull me into a world where trans people shouldn't have a conversation about this in front of black people, then you've already lost the plot, because for that to be relevant, you have to separate transness from blackness, which isn't a thing. That's just not real.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
So
like he could have said, maybe you all should. Well, first off, if he'd have got black queer people don't fuck with white queer people on a lot of levels.
We're aware.
Yeah. So Clifford probably like what's the dude name? I had somebody tell me this the other day. There's a guy, he's a gay guy. He's like a poppy dance gay guy, but he only hangs out with Taylor Swift. He doesn't hang out with Beyonce. You know what I'm saying? I can't remember his name. Somebody queer in the audience will know. And so like that's kind of my thing. It's like it's just so clumsy.
See, I feel like that it only gets clumsy if we take it in bad faith, because again, if you juxtapose it, where you say, I don't have a problem with trans issues, I have a problem with white people. When you say, hey, here's LGBTQ, and you're like putting a white person in the center of a black person, then it's like, okay. Then when you also make this statement like, hey, like, and again, you take this all in context, right? Because then it's like, okay, we're talking about the women's right, and he's like, yeah, I stand with women and so on and so forth. I stand for feminists and yada 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 yada. But then he's like, hey, what about that march and with the Me Too movement? He's like, yeah, I obviously respect the Me Too movement, but he's like, but I thought it was handled really really poorly. You know, it was real white. Literal the word. That's a quote, right? Or when he says like, yeah, and so I asked my homegirl, you know, she's just one of my favorite people, she's a lesbian woman, da 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 da, and I asked her what she thought about it, and she says, I hope those white bees get tear gassed. Right, I don't curse, but I don't mind if other people do. You know what I mean? But either way, so he said, "Yeah, I hope those white bees get tear gassed." So even then, he's like talking about a black queer woman, and he's talking about her perception of these marches. If I spend hours upon hours upon hours, both identifying black queer people, and then the entire time I'm always constantly demonizing, even when I'm talking about a trans person, I mention the race of the person. And I talk about, yeah, hey, no. Like when he sets up the joke for that for that white trans woman, he says, yeah, I'm in the middle of so and so with you know the tiki whites, he calls them the tiki whites, the kind of the QAnon believer Trump supporters one, those kind of whites. So he's always centering the whiteness, and then so that's why he says, yeah, I told you guys that, you know, you shouldn't have these conversations in front of white people, black people. He said, I know niggas in Brooklyn who wear high heels just to feel safe, right? Which I know there's plenty critique for that. Then he says, why is it easier for Bruce Jenner? Yeah, we're here.
And that, but like that, but that kind of the point I was about to make, because I acknowledge what you're saying, and you're saying is correct. If we wanted to. Like, I generally don't believe that Dave Chappelle actually has issues with trans people, right? Like, when I compare Dave Chappelle to J.K. Rowling, or, I don't know, fucking, I think his name is Scott Linehan. John Linehan is another British guy that's ruined his whole life because he hates trans people that much. Like, I don't think he's over in that world, right? But he's got this, he's doing a black uncle thing, which comes back to something I didn't finish talking about earlier in terms of my perception, which is there's something about being an elder black man that I both adore but also like which is, if you are a black man that has managed to make something out of your life and to have lived to a certain point, who gonna tell you anything? I be feeling like that sometimes, and I be having to check myself, because I be like, people say the wrong thing to me, I'm like, what the fuck you nigga, you know you think about that. So of course I know Dave Chappelle is there. And the problem with that, somebody called it uncle syndrome. Like Killer Mike is doing it now, you know what I'm saying? Cornel West. It's like your opinion on everything isn't all that useful. You maybe should just be like, I don't know. I love Andre 3000 when he's like, make a rap album. He was like, why? Like, that was the illest moment in hip hop of last year. Is him being like, I don't really need to talk about this shit.
Yeah, and nothing really to talk about.
And so like, I think that's where Dave is, because, and that's why, like, when you say take it in bad faith, it's hard to give good faith to a person who's operating in that space. When he made those same jokes 2 or 3 specials earlier, and people were like, hey, that's not it. And so then he quadruples down. It's no way to be in good faith at that point. You have to take that in bad, because you've shown you haven't learned anything. You've shown you aren't really listening to what we're saying. You've shown that you're still significantly undereducated on the topic that you're talking about to such length, to such a large audience. So there are good faith interpretations of Dave Chappelle's behavior. You know what I'm saying? Less now, because like the last thing he did was in that special saying he wasn't gonna make trans jokes no more, and then immediately started making more trans jokes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's what my last video was like. I was right about Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
You know, because I felt like if there was any ambivalence on how I interpreted what he was doing, it kind of ended with the Dreamer, because the Dreamer was even lazier. It had some good moments, probably better moments than the Closer, because he at least knew he couldn't make another whole hour about trans people, but it still showed a de-evolution in the hour-long capacity for like haymakers from him.
I get you.
You know, when you're talking about Killing Me Soft, when you're talking about the one he did in the yellow shirt or the yellow background, I can't remember. You know,
I'm terrible with names, bro, but I've seen them.
But he had 3 of the best of our generation, because I figure you're probably in your like mid-30s.
Late 30s. I'll be 40 this year.
Late 30s. Oh, congratulations. I'll be 42 soon. So like, yeah. So of our generation, the elder millennials, like 3 or 4 of the best comedy specials, an hour to a half hour long, in like a 10-year period, where he was like, the joke he made about the guy jerking off on the subway. Like, I don't know how I laughed. I don't even want to repeat that.
No,
but you know what I'm talking about.
It's a funny joke. It's a funny joke. Ain't no way around that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and
put them together.
And he goes from that to fucking, you know, Sunny Delight jokes or something. He did one joke in the last one. I was like, Dave. You know.
Okay, look.
I gotta get out of here.
I was gonna say you have a hard out.
Conversation, by the way.
It is.
But we can talk again about this if you want to.
Yeah, or we probably talk about something else, or we can. But what I wanted to say, because I know you got a hard out, I'm gonna say this really quickly. 1, I sincerely appreciate you having this conversation. It's not lost on me in any capacity, like the idea that you are obviously a pretty large content creator and I'm a very small content creator. Yet, despite that, you still were willing to talk to me. I don't even know what made you decide to be willing to talk to me, but I appreciate that.
And this happened months ago, by the way. I want to make sure people know this. This wasn't like a recent thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what, I mean, I be getting in and out of zones where I don't know what the fuck is happening in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember when we first chatted up, but it's so to respond to that, I've been making a concerted effort to talk to more people, especially other Black creators of a variety of sizes, as long as I'm not about to go in there and have to have a yelling match with a nigga. Right.
Which I appreciate 100%, because you're not a debater and I am a debater. I come from a humongous family, so I'm used to debating everything. But I like conversations. And I appreciate you for being willing to have that. When I mentioned to people that I was going to be having a conversation with you, I didn't understand how many haters you had until I said that. Then they came out the woodworks.
Niggas hate me.
My nigga, it was OD. I mean, people were just like, oh, that guy, da-da-da-da-da. No, it was crazy. I don't understand what that's about. I figured some of it's just because you're a leftist, and then because, you know, people hate leftists who aren't leftists, and then also, I don't know. Some people were saying because
leftists hate leftists too.
Right. Someone in my thing was telling me that because you're a Black leftist.
I hate Black men. I hate men in general. I hate Black men. I also hate Black women. Right. I hate white people too. I'm also a hotep, but I'm not radical enough. Right. And then Attack on Titan. Some of my biggest haters is about Attack on Titan. You didn't like Attack on Titan? That's the thing. I fucking love Attack on Titan. Okay. I just think it has the worst ending in the history of all media, and was low-key fat. Listen, if you hated Attack on Titan, I would have became one of your haters. Either way, I appreciate you for having the conversation. There's a lot of enemies. I'm gonna watch it now. It's over because I love that anime. That could be our next conversation. We might have to do that. Sincerely, I mean it. I appreciate you. You've obviously been like very successful and you've really stuck to your guns. I try to emulate what you do as far as like doing the video essay thing. It's not for me. I have to do everything contemporaneously, but you're very skilled at what you do. Again, you're very gracious for having this conversation. I appreciate you. I appreciate you for being pro-Black. I am very, very pro-Black. I'm also very much a progressive. I'm not a leftist. We have some very obvious disagreements, but I just appreciate you for the space that you're in and for what you've done and for being gracious and just continuing to do what you do. I wish you the utmost success, as you continue on in your journey. Maybe we'll talk again. I want to get in contact with them red flag dudes, waving the red flag guys. We're gonna make that happen one of these days. I've reached out. I don't know how to get in contact with them. If you can help me with that, that would be great. Yeah, I'll make that connection. I think you really, because they're like, and that's probably why I started saying I need to talk to more regular niggas. Like I'm getting way into the academic spaces with my people, and it's like I ain't talked to a regular nigga in like 6 months. So
yeah, for sure. For
yeah,
sure.
I'm gonna make that connection for you. And all levels. Well, I appreciate you you allowing me to come through and this being on some chill, good combo shit. And I gotta get up out of here, man. Peace.
All right, man. Peace out.
Escape